Okay, let's go.
Welcome back to the EndZone. The boys discuss some of the top topics surrounding the football landscape, including Trey Lance, the value of tight ends in fantasy, and some fantasy sleepers to keep your eye on. If you like what you hear, please drop a like and subscribe for more.
Paul, kick us off.
All right, I want to start off this discussion here with I don't quite understand the hate against Trey Lance. I think he's very, I think he has some talent still. He hasn't done anything in the league because he hasn't been given that opportunity. He's only played 4 real games. He got hurt one of them. He came in late second half against the Cardinals, his first start, or his first, NFL appearance, real appearance, and did really well. So I don't really understand. I see all this hate on Twitter that he's a bust. He recently got traded to the Cowboys. What do y'all think about Lance?
I kind of have a hard time with him because he's had, in my opinion, 2 goes to get the starting job last year, and then this year, or kind of this offseason. So maybe one in the same, but either way, he had midseason and this offseason trying to earn the starting spot, and frankly, he just didn't solidify it and didn't show something to the 49ers that he was worth starting. That's just my opinion.
Well, I just don't think he ever got that chance because the first year they had Garoppolo under salary. He was making more than him, so they had to play. And he's the veteran player, so they were playing him. There's the best chance to win. He got hurt. Lance went in. He had a great game. First game against the Cardinals, he went in at halftime. Okay, I believe it was the Seahawks actually. He went 9 for 18, 157 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then had 41 rushing yards. He outsnapped Lance that game. They didn't give him the credit for the win. So that should have been up, +1 to his stats. But every other game, he's only played 1 game with George Kittle. And then none of the games were with Christian McCaffrey as well. So he's really, Debo's been in every game they've played together. He's had multiple drops. Ayuk's been okay, but he's never had George Kittle, he's definitely a game changer in that offense.
I think that Kittle's absence definitely hurts, especially for a young quarterback. But I kind of think that, Kyle Shanahan has a pretty, significant role to play in simplifying the offense for a quarterback. But I think the problem with Lance is it looked like he just wasn't really trusting his reads at all. And I think with Shanahan, it's not even the sense of, hey, we want you to go out there and be the superhero. But I don't think that Lance was even able to continuously read the actual play that Shanahan put in place and, find the open reads that were intended to be there. So I think that was one of the biggest reasons why he was a failure in San Francisco. I agree with you. I don't see the reason to give him a lot of hate as far as, a quarterback, because he still is fairly young. And I think that he, could potentially have still a significant career. Alex Smith starting his career off, he was not very good. And, he actually ended up on the tail end of that, having a pretty significant and long duration throughout his career, being a good starting quarterback. But I want to say though, really quick, you brought up he had a really good game. I've never really seen him have a true significant game of him being a top tier quarterback, at least not worthy of trading up to that number 3 pick. I think really what the biggest hate on is not necessarily Trey Lance. I think it's more for the San Francisco 49ers for what they gave up to get him. If you take a look at it, the Dolphins in return, Steve, if I'm not mistaken, it was 3 first-round picks. In return for that, they were able to flip that for some good weapons for Tua. It turned out to be Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and then also they switched that all the way over for an edge rusher and Bradley Chubb. So yeah, I'm pretty sure in hindsight the 49ers would way rather have those guys on their squad. And I think the Trey Lance, although worth the home run hit, I didn't understand it for the 49ers. They were right there continuously competing for the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl. So we'll see how it goes with the Cowboys. I think that with Dak, I really do think that Trey Lance has a great mind to learn from. And Trey Lance is known to bring the tools to the table. I just don't think he has the right football IQ. I don't think he has enough reps under his belt. I need to double check and stat correct me here, but if I'm not mistaken, he's only had 600 or 700 career snaps, passing attempts. So if you look at it, man, he's only had 600 700 career snapping or passing attempts, and that's from high school. That's not even talking about college. So the guy's just very raw.
He did miss a whole season due to COVID, so there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, but that's not an excuse. He's just raw. That's not necessarily a bad thing for him. but it's something that I don't understand how, someone with that little experience got picked so highly. And that's also why I'm kind of doubtful on Anthony Richardson after this Trey Lance experience. I mean, I think Richardson has more upside as far as athleticism, but I mean, Lance had a good arm. Like, I'm not going to disregard that. I don't think that he learned how to read defenses correctly. I don't think he was able to read the plays and understand truly where guys were going to be when they needed to be there. So we'll see if maybe Dallas has some thoughts on that. Maybe Dak can help, provide some insight and help him kind of turn his career around. But for now, I mean, I'm thinking the 49ers kind of got lucky with even just getting a 4th round pick for him.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree. I was going to bring up the statistic if you didn't, Tim, but the lack of time under center, the amount of snaps that he's had throughout the entirety of his football career, from like high school to only really playing one season at an FCS school. Like, if you want to bring up Anthony Richardson, at least it was a season in the SEC, and then just a very odd start to his career in San Francisco. I don't think all of that's on him, but I don't think he's really helped himself out. I think now that the Cowboys have picked him up, he needs to be willing and understanding to accept that he is, for all intents and purposes, for the next few years at least, he is a backup quarterback. He will not be starting in Dallas unless Dak gets hurt. And I think with what Cooper Rush did last year, there's a lot to, at least in my eyes, think that they would go with Cooper before they go with Lance, just because of what they gave him, just because of what Cooper Rush gave them last year. So, I mean, as long as, Trey Lance is willing to kind of sit back, take what he has learned in San Fran, take what he's going to learn in Dallas under Dak, who I think, I'm a Cowboys fan, and I love Dak as a human being. He irritates me as a football player sometimes, but, I mean, he's a professional. I'm not. But, I mean, Dak is a very smart, QB. He's a QB's QB. He's got a high football IQ, so I think there's a lot of potential for Trey to come into Dallas. He's already been humbled, but if he didn't feel humbled then, he should now. And he needs to take it gracefully and learn from Dak as best as he can. And Mike McCarthy, who's coached, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And, maybe he does have that turnaround like Alex Smith or somebody like that. Well, it's just time will have to tell. But that's probably the biggest thing, is that he just needs to accept that he is a backup for now and for the foreseeable future before he has an opportunity to start again somewhere.
Yeah, I see him kind of in that Zach Wilson kind of role where, his previous team, I mean, not necessarily that Wilson's on a new squad, but it seems like it with Aaron Rodgers coming in. The team even talks about like how last year was such a failure because of the play at quarterback. So I think that he's just kind of have to, sit in the back, hold the clipboard, truly try to understand and learn from one of the guys with such a high football IQ, and hopefully, it could lead to a rebound in their career. So I do wish the best for him. Also as a Cowboys fan, I'm hoping that he does well, but at the moment, I still think that the 49ers were pretty lucky to even get some draft capital out of that.
What I do want to ask the Cowboys fans here, that I think Lance does play a role in this offense. I think we'll see him on the field next year quite a bit. They gave up a 4th round pick for him, and they're still going to have to pay his top 5 pick salary. So they're not just going to have him ride the bench. I do think he could play a role in red zone, kind of like a Taysom Hill style offense. I did see an interesting stat. Tony Pollard has only taken 18 carries inside the 10 his whole career. I know Zeke's been there as well, but that's 18 carries. Like that is nothing. That is, and was he 4 years or
yeah, 4 years,
a rookie deal. Yeah.
So like that's.
So I tag along. I mean, I think that you have a good point. I could see him potentially playing that red zone kind of that red zone threat, but the Cowboys do have a undrafted free agent, Hunter Lepke, that would probably be that power back kind of role. I know you brought that up about Pollard, but I think that's more just because they had Zeke, who was notoriously bigger built for that. But I mean, I'd be excited as a fan to see him in those red zone situations. Maybe doing some quick RPOs or some options and just seeing how he does. I mean, I'd say he's more athletic than Dak, but I mean, Dak was still decently athletic. I just think that We'll see. I really think that this year, because his salary, I know you mentioned is still his rookie deal, but I think that they were able to take advantage of some savings there due to the 49ers. I think they were able to work something out.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not mistaken, they only owe him, I want to say it's like $6 or $7 million over the next 2 years to him.
Yeah, I think they're playing most of it.
Yeah, so I think that the Cowboys will have an opportunity to kind of just have him like truly learn from Dak, and I think this is kind of could be a good thing. I know Dak was caught off guard from it, and I know he was a little upset, but I think he kind of needed a little bit of a fire lit under his ass, because I think it's something to be said about, hey, if you're not going to provide the results and we build this team around you, I mean, it's time to look at other options.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, and I mean, I hate that it happened this late. Like, I wish we would have had preseason games with him on the team, just to let McCarthy and the offensive coordinator kind of mess around, see where they can use him. I mean, I have to, whenever you bring up the money side of it, it's not really reasonable to assume that he's not going to play at all. But I don't know. It'll be interesting. I mean, I don't wish ill of him at all. Seems like a pretty solid dude. And I think, like Tim said, it's good to. Dak didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming. I was somewhere this weekend, and then when I saw it happen, I was like, "What the hell?" I was like, "Why did this happen?" And so it's. I think it is good for Dak. He's had too much, and he hasn't produced enough. For me as a fan, I think I can speak for most fans when I say that. I don't know. It's good. I think it's overall a good thing for all the parties that are involved. But we'll see. I don't know. I don't think it'll be anytime soon, but I don't know. Maybe they'll try some weird stuff out in the red zone. It's a good point, Paul.
So carrying on with our next question, with Travis Kelce in years past, I think multiple years, being the clear number one tight end in fantasy football, does age catch up to him this year, or do you think he keeps it going for another year, 2, 3, whatever it be? What do y'all think?
From a fantasy perspective, I really hope he doesn't fall off this year.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to assume that there might be somewhat of a taper off this year. I think the target share is going to be very similar to what it was last year, just because they didn't really. I mean, I know they drafted Rashee Rice out of SMU, but I mean, aside from that, it's still pretty much the same receiving core that they had last year. With Juju's gone now; he's with the Patriots. So I mean, I think he's going to get the targets to still produce like the number one tight end. I mean, after last year, he didn't show any signs of slowing down, and I think just his little off-season tour, seems to be really fired up, especially with the podcast with his brother. I think he has the attitude and the energy that he won't, but he's going to be 33, I think, by the time this season's 34. That's especially in as physical as a position as tight end is. I think it kind of depends on if he gets hurt, because he doesn't really get hurt a lot. He hasn't, so I definitely hope he doesn't. I really hope I didn't just jinx him and my fantasy team. But
knock on wood.
It's I hope he doesn't, but it's got to happen at some point. And I mean, 34 is a pretty typical age for it to start, I feel like.
He did have some back spasms last year, but nothing where, I mean, he didn't miss a game, so he's been relatively, and especially he's not blocking, so I think that helps his kind of overall body durability. And he's a very wiggly player as it is, so he's kind of just doesn't try to truck anybody. He takes the hit and falls to the ground or tries to get those extra yards. But as a Chiefs fan, I really don't want Kelce to start regressing, but it's bound to happen. Hopefully it's not this year. At least hopefully we get at least a year or two left of him. But only time will tell.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that he's someone that until Mahomes builds a repertoire with his young receiving core, he's going to be heavily relied upon. So as far as that regression, I don't think it's going to be coming anytime soon. I know it's in the horizon, but I still think him and Mahomes have that such a great connection and chemistry that he just finds a way to get open in those zones and sit there, and Mahomes will continuously find him. And I know it's a physical position, like you said, Ryan, but there's some tight ends that can, still have some pretty significant careers beyond their 30s. I mean, if you think back to it, like Antonio Gates, Jason Witten, Tony Gonzalez, like some of these guys played, 15-year long careers and had, still some solid success in their later years. I don't know if Kelsey will continuously put up, these crazy, 10 touchdown plus seasons and continuously racking, 1,000 plus yards, but I still think that he's going to still be a significant factor for the Chiefs until he retires. My question is if the Chiefs keep going on these Super Bowl runs and winning, I mean, at some point, some guys want to just kind of ride off into the sunset. I'm a little nervous about that with him because I know that he has such a big off the field fan base, and he's got the podcast with his brother, and I'm sure his brother, if I'm not mistaken, this is his brother's last ride. So, if they win the Super Bowl and his brother's retired, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Travis wants to hang him up then, but we'll see what happens.
Honestly, a little bit whenever he did.
Yeah, going on top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think for the good of football, I hope it doesn't happen anytime soon because they are so much fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he is, I'm younger for any of the older viewers that we have in our audience, but he is far and away the best tight end I've ever watched play football. And this is me in the prime time of Jason Witten's career. But I mean, Travis Kelce he's definitely up there as far as tight ends that I know about and definitely have seen play with my own eyes.
Now, I've got a question going off of that. Say Kelce does retire sometime in the near future. How does that affect Mahomes's, I guess, just offense, honestly, or the Chiefs' offense? Does that make a huge difference on Mahomes's career after that point, or do you think it carries on kind of with how they treated the receiving cores very much? There's not a true wide receiver one. It's just whoever's going to find the ball that game type thing.
Yeah, it'll definitely. I mean, there's no lying. It's going to change the offense. He is the number one target, and it's not even close. And Mahomes leads the league in yak yards. So after Tyreek left, when they were playing when they moved to the two high safeties, everything had to be dump downs basically, or sub 20 yards. So the way that they play him now, everything kind of has to be short yardage, I guess, throws, and then them do the rest of it. We do have some good receivers. Justin Ross, as long as he can stay healthy, that dude, he's going to be a dog. Same with Tony. He just needs to stay healthy and then keep the off the field issues off the field. And then Rashid Rice, if he can get those drops down, I think he looks like an absolute stud. And then who knows what Sky Moore is going to do, but second round pick, he's got to be an athlete.
I think Mahomes is one of those guys. Like, first, I guess before I say this, it's kind of hard to picture Mahomes without Kelce. I can't do it, but I said the same with Tyreek when Tyreek left after, right before last year. And so, I mean, I think Mahomes is just, he's the type of player that, and not to discredit the people that you just mentioned, Paul, but like, he could throw to a plumber and it would probably turn out well because he's just that type of football player. Like
Justin Ross plays on the team, so
yeah, exactly.
Or Justin Watson.
So it's interesting. It's hard for me to picture a Kansas City Chiefs offense without Kelce, but I don't know. I think Mahomes is going to find whatever it takes to win, and that's it's whoever they have. And I don't think it's like because I've thought about this before, but like I don't think it's like a situation in Green Bay where it's like you have Aaron Rodgers, you have the most talented quarterback in the league, and they're just gonna screw him by not drafting good receiving talent. I mean Andy Reid, as long as he's coaching, I mean he's one of the best coaches in the NFL right now and has been for a very long time. And the ownership loves Mahomes, would probably let him run the organization by the time he's done retiring. After all he's done for him. So, I mean, I think they'll set him up for success whenever Kelce decides to leave, whether that's through, building draft picks and getting guys like Rashid Rice or moving people around and trading and bringing in talent for him too.
And frankly, I think there's a lot of good young tight ends coming into the league. I mean, this year, how many were drafted?
Yeah, this past year was insane. I mean, first 3 rounds, I think it was 6 or 7, probably, which is unheard of.
Next year, you have Brock Bowers coming up too, which maybe that becomes an option for him if Kelsey's starting to talk about it. I mean,
he'll go too early.
Yeah,
there's not a chance.
I mean, we'll see, man. I will say this though: if Kelsey does hangs up the cleats, and you mentioned about the Rodgers situation. I mean, I hate to say it, guys, but Mahomes is not getting paid like the quarterback that he is. And so, in my opinion, if they can't replace Kelsey with some solid talent, I would not be surprised if Mahomes eventually, starts raising his hand and raising questions about, hey, what's next? If not, I want out. So it is maybe something to discuss in a separate topic or a separate discussion here. But again, I think that Kelsey, he'll continue to play well, and if he goes down, I mean, there's a lot of young wide receiver talent. They're all very raw and a lot of unknowns, but we'll see. I want to point out though, from what I understand, I think that Sky Moore is kind of going to be that replacement to Juju as far as that role. And Kadarius Toney is going to continue to potentially expand in his role as kind of a shifty slot and speed threat. So we'll see how that goes. But I, like you said, guys, I mean, as long as those teams keep playing those double safety high looks, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Kelsey's going to continuously rack up, close to 1,000 yards, if not over, every season until he's done.
I agree.
Perfect. Now carrying on, Ryan, before the podcast, you talked a little bit, I guess, off camera about being in some deep fantasy leagues and kind of seeing some talent later in the drafts, like names you recognized and pretty much along those lines. Can you kind of elaborate on that for us a little bit?
Yeah. So this past weekend, I had my draft for my longest running league. These are all of my high school friends from Shreveport, Louisiana. We all went to Loyola College Prep, who I'm repping right now. I didn't do that on purpose, but it worked out. And so this was our 10th year drafting, I think. So pretty cool, but we're pretty deep. So it was a 14-man draft, normal 1-year draft, not like a dynasty or anything, 16 rounds. And I had the 3rd overall pick. And so that on round 16, I was on the back end. So I had pick 222. I saw Alec Pierce, and just kind of, I know he's a rookie last year, but I felt like that was a pretty good value to pick up that late in the draft, especially just because, I mean, like the Colts have Micah Pittman, and I know they have the question mark of Anthony Richardson starting. We don't really know what it's going to look like, but I mean, Alec Pierce is arguably the wide receiver 2 on the Colts. And then I started to kind of think about it and started looking at the names that had gone off the board in the later rounds. And I'm looking at like Ronald Jones, Mecole Hardman, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Allen Robinson. I mean, Marvin Jones is old, but I mean, still a very, all these names that you still recognize, and like heavy names. And I don't know if that's just because we started doing this and I know more about the NFL now and pay attention to more things. Or maybe it's just I've been keeping up with college football so much that I recognize all these names from when they played in college. I don't know. But it just feels like there's so much, maybe not as much talent, but like notable talent. And maybe that's, we could talk about just like social media, like seeing these guys on the Rivals and the 247s, all the Twitter pages and Instagram and everything like that. There's just so many notable names that can go in the later rounds. It's really, I don't know, just something that kind of stuck out to me. I don't know what y'all's thoughts are on that, but
yeah. I mean, I think one of those kind of the big factors, those are big names. I think just the amount of young rookie receivers and second-year receivers that have been exploding into the league. Like, I mean, I'm looking up a draft right now. Zay Flowers was taken, Quentin Johnson. You have Olave, Garrett Wilson, all these young, absolute studs that are coming in the league. So unfortunately, someone's got to be pushed out, and those guys have upside is the only thing they got. So why not take them? And you kind of know Robinson. I know I've personally been burned by him several times, taking him in fantasy. MVS, I love the dude. He's a funny guy, but he'll have like one really good game, and then that's about it. And then there's just a bunch of older guys who they're really good waiver wire pickups. They may be, good here and there, but they're just, you already know what they are. and then that's not going to win in terms of fantasy wise. That's probably not going to win you your league or.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think
give you that
the
advantage.
Alex Shears pick is going to.
I think
win
that
this
one could.
championship for him, but
you never know. He's a deep threat.
yeah, well, we'll see. Maybe him and Richardson build up a good rapport. So
one that kind of surprised me in the draft we're all in was Zach Ertz, his ADP being kind of like 200 plus, which yes, he's coming off an ACL, right? Kind of like what we were talking about with the previous conversation with tight ends, the injury bug a little bit. I think if he comes back, he could be very good, especially because Cardinals, they just cut Colt McCoy, and you've got Tune starting now, young quarterback, and you're going to have a quality tight end, assuming he comes back healthy. He could be a great fantasy pickup, or he could get traded. I mean, the Cardinals are in basically full rebuild mode this year, trying to just accrue draft capital. And I mean, maybe a contender needs a tight end some point in the year. Maybe they trade him for day 2, 3 pick, whatever. Like, he could be a good pickup, but he's late, and maybe a waiver wire pickup. Maybe you don't need to draft him. I mean, most leagues, it looks like he's a waiver wire pickup, but that was one that shocked me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like you said, there's a lot of talent that kind of dips along. I think that Ertz, if he can recover healthily, and become healthy again, he's still a stud player. I think that, with that being said, again, he's still on the Cardinals though, which can kind of be a little bit of a.
But they might say they trade him for draft capital. I mean, it could be totally possible. I mean, they're going full rebuild, and he's an old player on a new contract.
If Kelsey goes down,
yeah, I could see it.
I mean, teams that are win now mode, that if their tight end gets hurt, it'd be an easy trade. I mean, obviously that's trade deadline's earlier than it's on week 8, I think. So kind of have to get hurt before then.
Really quickly though, I want to point out, Paul, when you brought up this new explosion of young talent coming into the league and bringing up the players that you did, all of those were wide receivers. So I just want to point that out. So when you say that these young guys are taking over the league and that someone's got to get pushed out, I really think that you're seeing that with running backs, and not necessarily just any running back. I'm talking guys that were top in the fantasy league last year who are slowly getting kind of pushed out because either contract issues or age concerns. I mean, it's a weird time, but I think with this, all these high school and college kids now doing 7-on-7 during those summer times, I think that with that being said, you're seeing these wide receivers come out even much more explosive and talented than before. So, like you said, I think there's a lot of first-year wide receivers and second-year wide receivers that look primed to be fantasy studs, and I think you're going to continue to see that in the near future.
Yeah, I don't think that's slowing down anytime soon. Just the fact that players are starting to play at a high level at so young, the Pee-wees and the all-star leagues or whatever they're called, they're starting from 3rd, 4th grade, and they're playing all the way through college, and they're focused. I think it's a lot more that people are focusing on one position instead of just being an overall athlete. You really hone in on that craft, and you pick up all the route trees, and running back, you pick up where to cut, where to all the juice and all that stuff. So I think it's just that, and then obviously just people are getting more athletic as time goes on.
Well, I'm sure we all remember too, like growing up for us when we were in high school, middle school, like baseball was a year-round thing. They had their select leagues, and football, like you largely had your football season. Maybe in the off season you went to a camp or two, you did your off-season workouts, and that was pretty much it. Like maybe you had a 7-on-7 thing with the school, but it was not a year-round thing. And it's starting to become that kind of year-round thing. Maybe not contact year-round, but it's getting there.
Yeah, especially for like all the 7-on-7. I know like in Louisiana, there you have a really great 7-on-7 program that, but I mean, it's great, and it gives the kids a hell of a lot of exposure, but it is all year. And I mean, it kind of builds off what you were saying, Tim. It's like these guys are getting in front of, they're having these 7-on-7 tournaments in college campuses. Coaches are seeing these kids when they're like in 7th and 8th grade. I remember when I was like kind of in 7th and 8th grade, there were people like Dylan Moses is a name that comes to mind. He was an outside linebacker for Alabama. Me and him were the same grade. And I remember LSU, he went to the school that was on LSU's campus, their lab school, and he got offered as a 7th grader. And I was like, what the hell is going on? But now it's the norm, baby Gronk. I mean, Jesus, you see that. Like, it's the whole landscape of it all has changed. And I kind of grew up in it and saw it. Not that I wasn't good enough to get offered by LSU at 11 years old, but some of these guys are, and like you see some people that are just grown men at 11 years old. It's kind of scary. You don't know what's in the water, So,
but wrapping up that conversation, Tim, you wanted to talk about some of the 2024 rookies coming in, maybe for some of those dynasty leagues out there to start looking at that, and just honestly anybody interested in the next year's draft. Who are you tracking a little bit?
Yeah, guys. So with the 2024 college season kicking off, I think that, not all of us are huge college football fans. Some like the NFL or the NCAA, vice versa. I'm just going to give you a quick high list of players that I think y'all should keep your eye on if you are in a dynasty league or maybe interested in joining one. Because 2024, that draft is going to be here before you know it. And so kind of kicking things off, starting off with Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver out of Ohio State. He looks like the second coming of Randy Moss at 6'4". I believe he's about 220 pounds. He's destined to be a top 5 pick. I think I saw that he was working out with CJ Stroud for CJ Stroud's pro day. And a lot of the NFL scouts were saying it was like, window shopping for a Ferrari. I mean, you had just an absolute stud there, and you can't touch or do anything with it. So you just have to stay in there and look. So that's just my number one, I'd say, to take a look at. Number 2, Brock Bowers. He's an absolute freak. He's probably not as athletic as Kyle Pitts, but I think that Bowers as overall tight end is much better and will come into the league as a much more best fit jack of all trades kind of tight end. The dude can block, he can run, he can catch, he can do everything that you need him to do. For Georgia, he always continuously found ways to get open. I think he's going to be a top 10 pick in 2024. And depending on which system he is, he could be a good tight end to have or to keep your eyes on for the draft. Up next, Donovan Edwards. So he was the backup to Blake Corum. I think that Edwards is a little bit more well-rounded than Corum. He's still pretty good as far as speed goes, but I think that he has better size, and I think he could be a better utility player for the team. I know that he wasn't lined up a lot on passing downs this past year, but when he did look pretty solid from my view. Up next, Braylon Allen, running back out of Wisconsin. Guys, if you haven't seen this, you really need to. This guy's an absolute monster. He is 6'2", 240 pounds, built like Derrick Henry, kind of plays with that same power as Derrick Henry, but looks a little bit faster, honestly. Going into 2024, he will only be 20 years old when he's on the NFL team. And so as long as there's not really any injury coming his way, man, I think this guy could have a significant season and a significant role for his NFL squad. I don't think he's going to be used for passing down so much with that size, but I could see him on the NFL side converting a lot of short yardage opportunities and a lot of red zone opportunities.
Sounds like he'd be a good pass blocker too.
Yeah, he could be for sure. Next up, I got Caleb Williams, quarterback out of USC. No big story there. Unanimous first overall pick. I think he has the skill set and the talent to be, the quarterback 1 going into the 2024 draft. So depending on what team that is, if they have some decent weapons and a good offensive line behind them, this guy could be potentially break the notch as a top 10 quarterback in terms of fantasy. Up next, Trey Benson. He's a former Oregon running back. He's now, I believe, with Florida State. He had a pretty significant year last year, but I think he's looking to build on that. I know that they have a solid quarterback returning as well as a wide receiver, but Benson, I think, is kind of a do-it-all running back. I think he's going to be a day 2 pick in the NFL draft. So I say just keep your eye on him. I think he's worthy of keeping your keep a tab on him and just see what's going on. As the draft approaches, he might be able to fit his way onto a good squad that is looking to replace their bell cow back, and I think this guy has the size and athleticism to do that. And then last but not least is Drake May, kind of similar to Williams. Not a big surprise here. This guy had an unbelievable season last year, and he's looking to build upon that. He threw for 38 touchdowns and 4,300 yards, but he only had 7 interceptions. So the guy, he absolutely torched college defenses, and he was also able to read some pretty good. It looks like he was able to read some of the defenses pretty well and still, step up in the pocket and make good throws. I want to point out really quickly, though, he has good size and good mobility for his size. Kind of reminds me, a lot of people say he's like Justin Herbert. So I think he's another player, worth keeping tabs on. If he goes to a good squad with a good O-line and, more specifically with players that are able to, catch, some high-powered throws, I think that this guy is going to be pretty good in terms of fantasy.
And that wraps us up this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe. And if you have any points you want to make, or if you want to call any of us out, please comment below. Thanks so much.